Okay, I see it now.
All right. We should be here now.
Hey, good morning, Chief. Good morning, Dominique.
What's up? Good morning.
Right. Greetings. Good morning. I think I got a small lag on this side. Bear with me.
All right.
All right. So, welcome to the show, everybody out there. Just let me know. Put your finger up if you can hear me clear. Baba. All right. So we're here for another dynamic Gullah House show. You know, with the one and only Baba Kimo, representing Orangeburg, live and direct. We got Lil Cuz over there, Dominique Holiday, representing Orangeburg County as well. And it's yours truly, Mansa Fodia Jamu. I'm out here in Freetown, but I represent Orangeburg anywhere I'm at. So it's a Gullah Geechee thing. Welcome to our house, and we're here for another great show. Today's show, we bring back for the second time one of the pioneers and really one of our big bros out here, man, in these research and reclaiming our history streets. Brother Wayne O'Brien, Gullah Geechee brother, representing Charleston, has done great work towards the preservation. But we brought him back for a conversation about Charleston, the slave trade, as well as the story of the Wanderer ship, one of the last slave ships to ever reach the United States of America, documented 1858. And we'll be talking about that, maybe some face mugs, some face jugs, and all that kind of stuff too, man. So what's going on with y'all? How y'all doing over there first before we bring the brother out? What's going on in Orangeburg?
Chief. First thing I want to say, hey, Dominique,
What's
and
up?
then the next thing I want to say is first, it's May 19th, so we should remember Malcolm X Day is his birthday. So happy birthday to the great Malcolm X.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
As for me, man, life has been lifing. You know, they celebrated my 40th anniversary. Just got back from the Bahamas and everything. That was great. Had a good time down there, and I'm enthusiastic about today's episode. I've had a chance to not only talk with
Congratulations.
I've talked with Brother Wayne online and offline. He's come to visit me several times at the Orangeburg Library. So I'm pretty sure he's got some knowledge to say, so some jewels to drop on us today.
Oh,
Your turn, Dom.
okay. Yeah,
Absolutely.
man.
Dominique, what's
Everything
going on with
going
you,
good.
man?
Everything going good out here, man. You know, research, man. More information and intelligence to gather, man. Just happy to be with you fellas this morning, man, to get some jewels.
All right.
It'll be another
All right.
great
I
one.
guess without
Yeah,
further
man.
ado, we can bring Brother Wayne on.
Yeah, man. Well, you know, you're always welcome, brother.
Yeah, I
One of the things I've been able to do since our last show is
can't hear
oh
you.
yeah, for sure. Sure. I was gonna say that I've been able to write a pamphlet as well, a short pamphlet, but we'll talk about that later on in the show.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to make sure that's out there so everybody can read it.
Greetings.
How's everybody?
Yeah,
Good
I'm
morning,
good.
Brother Wayne. Good morning. How you doing down there? You in Augusta or Charleston?
I'm in the Aiken County area.
Aiken
Yeah.
County area. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Good to have you back on, brother.
Oh, hey, man, anytime.
Well, I guess our first question. Well, since today is Malcolm X Day, and I know you have some some revelation or something to say about it being Malcolm X's birthday and everything.
I'm sorry, I got a little
Oh,
delay here. Hopefully, y'all can catch me in real time.
okay. Yeah. Matter of fact, I think I may have seen a post earlier today, but years ago we found out that Malcolm X's ancestor Ajar, who was
Mhm.
brought in from Africa and came through Sullivan's Island and went through that whole process. Uh, the only thing when I remember when they found that information, the only thing that really I was upset about was that they couldn't find it while Brother Malcolm was still alive, because Malcolm was leading his family's way back to finding their their African identity and having pride in it. And it's a shame that he didn't get to ever hear the news about them finding his ancestor that actually came over and first stepped foot on this soil here. But if y'all know the story, his son Tony Little ended up being transported to Georgia, and that's how Malcolm got the surname Little. But we
Mhm.
do know his ancestor's African name,
Mhm.
and y'all know that's a jewel when you can find. Y'all found it, the ones that got off of the boat.
Yeah.
And I told him I hadn't found the one that got off the boat yet. I got all the way back to the mid 1700s. I keep running into a white man every time. The further I go back, I keep running into a white man. Have to cuss a little bit, but accept it as a fact, and just
Yeah.
keep on trying. 'Cause I think some of the ladies I could trace there, but their names change when they marry and things like that.
Mhm.
Uh, so I'm still digging through, all these Charleston records. I just want to get one that got off the boat, and I'll be happy.
Yeah.
It's a great revelation when you meet one or connect with one.
Yeah.
Like Dominique,
Yeah.
Dominique found his ancestor, and I
Mhm.
was able to connect with my ancestral family and everything, and that's probably one of the biggest things that ever happened to me is to make that connection to
Yeah.
Sierra Leone. But I know today Chief wants to talk about the Wanderer slave ship
Yeah.
and how it came to Edgefield County
Right.
and and the people that were on that cargo and the things that were going on in that Edgefield County area. So can you give us some background on that?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I always fall into these stories because I was born in Charleston, but when I was 40, I found out my father's side of the family came out of this Edgefield County area. Hamburg, and that's where the Wanderer group ended up landing. But it was in 1858. Uh, Most people don't know the entire story because since slavery didn't end until 1865, a lot of people don't realize that the transatlantic slave trade was outlawed in 1808.
Mhm.
So what happened when they did the U.S. Constitution? It was 1787, and because they wanted to actually end the slave trade when they were doing the Constitution, but
Mhm.
the states in the North wanted to end it. States in the South didn't. So they said, if y'all don't allow us to keep the slave trade open, we won't sign on. For them to get that 13 colonies to start the country. So they had to come up with all these compromises. And so in that compromise, they said, okay, what we'll do is we'll allow the slave trade to stay open for 20 years where we won't touch it. And this is the middle passage part, bringing people from Africa to the Americas. And
Mm-hmm.
so but in 20 years, they said that we can go back in and revisit it. So they did that compromise to get the Constitution done. 20 years later, 1807, they said, well, as soon as this end of this year, we'll be able to go in there as a Congress. And they had more people in the North than in the South. So they had more representatives in Congress than the South did. And so they said, after that 20 years, you can't bring people from Africa into the U.S. anymore, but we'll leave the institution alive on the continent, and y'all can have what is called now the domestic slave trade. From
Mhm.
state to state, they had plantations that were basically breeding houses where they could create their own, children and things like that were going to be enslaved.
Mhm.
So 1808, it was illegal to bring Africans from Africa, even though we had some illegal slave ships, come in. So in 1858, 50 years after the slave trade was banned, the transatlantic slave trade was banned, a guy named Charles Lamar decided he wanted to open it back up. And so he actually bought a racing yacht called the Wanderer. And the reason he bought this racing yacht is because he said, when I go over to Africa, if the government gets wind of me illegally transporting Africans, I'll be able to outrun them to get back to the coast. And actually, they did find out that he was doing it. But he went over to the Congo, took on about 400 Africans there, came back. He had gotten word that the federal government heard about it, but he, basically could outrun any of those ships they had. So he got to Jekyll Island in Georgia. Jekyll Island is about halfway between Savannah and Jacksonville. If you're going from Georgia to Florida, traveling south, about 100 miles or so from Savannah, about an hour and a half ride, you'll hit Jekyll Island. And so he landed there, but the government was hot on his tracks. So he had to get rid of this large group of Africans. He had about 400 native Africans that spoke not a word of English. And if you had been here since 1808, you would have picked up some English by then. And so they said, well, if they capture us with this large group of Africans that don't speak a word of English, they'll know we just brought them in here. So he said, I got to disperse this group. He put about 200, almost half of that whole group that made it, onto a ship and sailed up the Savannah River. They had those paddle boats back then. Sent them up the Savannah River because he had a cousin named Thomas Lamar that lived in the Edgefield County area. Today it's a low area over there called Beach Island. It's right across from Augusta, Georgia. But he sent him up there. His cousin had a plantation that stretched all the way to the Savannah at that area. And so they took them off right there. And the Thomas Lamar plantation, I told you I happened to fall into this area because I live about 5 miles from the landing site where they landed this group of wanderers and wanderer captives. And I live 2 miles from the plantation where they were taken. So they were taking the Thomas Lamar plantation. Actually, the house is still there, and there's one slave cabin still on the property. And matter of fact, a friend of mine, African American brother, recently bought that property, and so he's trying to restore that cabin and that house, and he's going to use it as an interpretive center. And so, so that brought a half of those wanderer survivors inland to the Edgefield County area, and that cousin Thomas Lamar was supposed to broker the sales, the different local planters. That Tillman family, Pitchfork Band Tillman, who eventually became the governor, Tillman family got about 20 of them. And matter of fact, one of the most famous survivors of the Wanderer came off of that Tillman plantation. Now, this is what's interesting is that the Wanderer landed in 1858. Really close to the end of the year, like November 1858. Slavery was going to be over in 7 years. So they didn't have that multi-generational, grandma, great-grandma, all of them enslaved. They were the first generation that landed of Africans, and 7 years later, they were free. So since their landing was so recent, all of those guys remembered their African names, where they came from, the culture, all the practices, and they got off of the boat actually reproducing a lot of the things that they were doing when they were in West Africa. Now they couldn't get back because they were trying to raise money to get back, but they never did get back. And even though when they landed on those plantations, of course, y'all know the practice of making them change their names.
Yeah.
But they didn't forget their African names. They hadn't been beaten out of them, hadn't been stripped from them, and so that we had this new group of Africans that landed into the area, and it kind of infused a lot of people with this string of information that's coming from the motherland that most of them had forgotten, except for the older folk. The older folk, of course, were in tears because now, we were the only ones still alive that remembered Africa, and here's this new group coming in, and they can basically tell those children, hey man, what your grandparents were saying was true, things like that. But yeah, it was a very interesting. I'm glad that the guy ended up having to disperse them, because that group that came to the Edgefield County area became the more famous group. When they started looking for them, they found that large group of them together, and they started interviewing them then. This was almost turn of the century.
Yeah.
They had actually come to Columbia
Yeah.
for like the state fair, and they were recreating those
Baskets.
houses. Yeah, houses made out of the straw and the grass.
Yeah. Yeah, they said that they had huts. They said they had
Yeah.
huts right there on the plantations, man. They said the one
Yeah.
brother, he even wrote the local newspaper and said, send me to Africa. He
That
said,
was
man,
Roy
send me
Lee.
back home. I'm such and such from this kingdom. They said
Yeah.
some of them was royalty, some of them
Right,
had
yeah.
staff, some of them was royalty. And even the ones that got split, some of them went to Jacksonville, some of them went all the way to Texas, but they was all relatives. They were from the same places. They knew each
Yeah,
other.
and see, because they were all connected to that ship. See, by them, that being such a late ship, just the same way, with the Clotilda down there in Mobile, that was 1860.
Yeah.
But they were all
Much larger
connected
though.
by the
Much
ship.
larger.
Oh, but the Wanderer one was larger than the Clotilda. But they were connected to the ship. Most of the African that we can trace our ancestors back to Africa, we usually can't trace them to exactly which ship they came off of.
Nope.
Right.
But because this large group came off of this singular ship, and it was so recent that they were grouped together as survivors of the slave ship Wanderer.
Right.
And then matter of fact, and so they remained friends their whole life. When I first started researching the groups that was down here, there were some senior citizens that remembered them, that were still alive. I don't know how many of them are still alive now. There were people like in their 80s and 90s. Because see, those guys they were dying out. Think about this now. They just got here in 1850, 1858. And a lot of them were young.
Yeah.
So they were dying out, 1930s, 1940s and stuff like that. Well, those senior citizens around here, they was living back then. And they would talk about but they were living.
That's exactly why I want to have the conversation. That's exactly why this conversation was for the show, man, because not to cut you off, brother, but the Wanderer has not getting the kind of exposure within the Black community. So many of us have never heard of the Wanderer. And from my research of it, just like what you're saying, this was something that was well planned. It was well known. It was well documented.
Right.
It's not a hidden ship like Clotilda.
Right.
They took this ship and used it during the Civil War.
Right.
And so this is a well documented case, and you're talking about South Carolina. You're talking about our area. That Aiken, Edgefield, Orangeburg, Barnwell, that area. And so naturally I'm thinking, what are some of the lineages? What are some of the names that they took? And how can we find out some of the lineages? Because I think that most of us who take DNA tests, we have a high level of Congolese ancestry.
Right.
I've been doing this research with Baba Akimo, and that Midland area is flooded with Congolese bloodline.
Yeah. We actually been doing you can Google it. It'll come up, and we even got a video on it. It's called the Wanderer Project. And the way that I know we're going to get into the face jug, so I'll just get into it right now. Edgefield had developed this type of pottery glaze, and Dave the slave potter and things. If you see an Edgefield jug, you can almost recognize it's got this greenish brown glaze on it.
Yeah, I've seen them in the museum.
And so it's called the Edgefield pottery technique. When the Wanderer group landed up here in Edgefield County, they put some of those guys to work in the pottery. So the pottery is, close to where they actually landed up here. Like I said, I can walk out of my house in 2 miles, I'll be at that same pottery site. And but there's also this large production of kaolin. Kaolin is that fine white clay,
Mm-hmm.
what they make china out of, where there's like a mountain of kaolin, right across the street.
Oh
So when
yeah.
those guys landed, what they had a practice in West Africa, in the Congolese areas specifically, of making these figures, these power figures in kisi. And when they would carve it out, maybe out of wood or anything, and they usually had a hollow in it. It could be in the stomach or something, but they had to introduce kaolin clay because the kaolin clay was the spiritual activator. It gave the object power. So if you make an object, it's a dead object.
Mm-hmm.
It can't do anything. You can't use it for anything until you add the clay, and then that gave it there's a spiritual connection, and then you could use it to talk to ancestors, get information, things of that nature. So they would make the figure and make the eyes and the teeth out of kaolin clay, and then they would also put kaolin all over the object. So when these Africans landed and they put them to work in the potteries, in their spare time, they were making these pottery vessels out of clay that had faces on them. And then they looked over and there was a big giant mountain of kaolin clay over there,
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking like, oh wow, this is the stuff we need, So they grabbed and made the eyes and teeth out of it. And when we did the latest exhibition on the pottery from Edgefield County, on the video, they asked me a question. They said, what were they using these for? I said, well, they could use these for invoking the ancestors to help them do all kinds of things. I said, they could have been using it to end slavery. And they said, yeah, I never thought of that. I said, yeah, but guess what? It might have worked. Because shortly after they landed, everybody got freed,
Yeah.
So, yeah, and so that was one of those African practices that they brought over, in their minds on the boat and just recreated it over here. But the guy you was asking about, somebody specifically, there was one of the wanderer slaves, the most famous one, basically, is Ward Lee.
Yeah.
Now, Ward Lee,
Mm-hmm.
her name was Ward Tillman when they put him on he went to the Tillman plantation. And so in 1870, at first census, when they included, people, former slaves, his name is Ward Tillman on the 1870 census. By the 1880 census, he's changed it to Ward Lee.
Mm-hmm.
So he's exercising now my freedom and my independence to choose my own name.
Yeah.
So we know his name was Silingunji when
Yeah.
he was on the Wanderer. He came off of there. This new family gave him a name. This, enslavers gave him a name, Ward Tillman, after the Tillman plantation. And then he said, okay, well, I'm going to keep that American name here, first name, but I'm going to choose my own name. And I think the reason he was doing it because now he's in a country where everybody speaks English. And so he adopted a name that was more American, but he always remembered it was an African name. And he told all of his children, my name is really Silingunji. And
Wow.
in the African practices, your last name would be what your dad's first name is, and things like that. But that guy, what we did with the Wanderer Project, there was a lady, as a matter of fact, she just passed away a couple of weeks ago. European American lady up in Pennsylvania, whose grandfather had found a face jug.
I've seen that.
Yeah, and so and it was by accident. He was a plumber, and they were going to build a new school, so they were digging a trench to lay the pipes in, and his shovel hit something hard, and he dug it out, and there was this jug with a face on it, and they didn't know what it was. They thought it was Indian pottery, and so he took it home. Wife was scared of it because this is in Pennsylvania. That's not even in the South, so they don't know nothing about this culture. So he took it home. The wife was scared of it. The grands and all was scared of it. So they just wrapped it up in newspaper, put it in the cabinet. So now April, the lady who just passed, she was born maybe in the 70s. And she always heard about this job, but she had never seen it because it was wrapped up. And then, when the mom started to move and they had to start unpacking all the stuff out of the cabinet, she saw it for the first time. And then when her mom got older and they were going to put her like in a assisted living facility, April got the jug, and when she wanted to put it out and set it on the table. Then this jug kept talking to her all the time. Hey, and so it was funny. Her and the jug became friends, and she said, "Well, I guess I need to give this jug a name." So she called the jug Lewis. And so now, but the jugs keep on saying, you need to find out who I am and where I came from. So she started researching it, and people told her, they said, "Hey, that's one of those Edgefield pots." So she's trying to figure out, well, how to get to Pennsylvania. And in her research, she found the guy that owned the land originally where the jug was found. And the guy ended up having a chauffeur. His name was, guess what his name was? Louis Gardenhire. She had named the jug Louis. Found the guy, his name was Louis Gardenhire. He was African American. And then when she looked to see where he was from Edgefield, South Carolina. So she said, okay, now I know how I got here. I need to go to Edgefield. I want to meet some of these Gardenhires and see if I can find out more about Louis Gardenhire. Now, some of my cousins are Gardenhires, so when she called down to Edgefield, the people at the archives said, well, you need to talk to Wayne O'Brien because his family is the Gardenhires. And he's a historian, so he can probably help you. So she came down looking for Gardenhires, but when she started talking, I said, well, wait a minute. In my mind, I said, this sounds like a wanderer story to me. She's looking for a family story. I'm saying it sounded like a wanderer story. And so I didn't want to tell her, hey, you need to change what you're looking at. Because y'all know this, all of us researchers, we're working on something, somebody here talking to us here about it, and then they try to tell us to work on something else. They want to work on, hey, man, you should be doing this. And we look, man, I'm doing what I'm doing. Yeah. So I said, well, I don't want to tell her to change her focus, but I just happen to have these newsletters in my bag, and they had census. As a matter of fact, the title of them was like 4 different newsletters. It was called Born in Africa. And it had all of the African Americans that were born in Africa that were on the census, and they put it on their census sheet. And all those wanderers was in there.
Wow.
So I told her, I said, hey, I got something I think might help you. And I gave her the sheets with the names on it. And I just said, well, if she read these, hopefully she'll find her own way to that story. And then she went back to Pennsylvania. And about a week later, she called me and said, hey, man, Wayne, guess what I'm working on? I said, what? She said, The Wanderer story. I said, I know. She said, well, how do you know? I said, that's what I was hoping I was going to get you to find it on your own. But so we started working together, the festival. See, I'm living down here, and there's a lot of Wanderer descendants here. And she's up there, but she's the one getting led by this jug, because people were telling me, why don't you take the story and take the lead from this white lady? And I was saying, no, because sometimes stories find you. And I said, if this story was mine, my granddaddy would have found the face jug. The granddaddy found it, but it wasn't his story to tell. The parents after the granddaddy, they were scared of it. The jug had a connection to the little girl.
Yeah.
And so the jug started talking to her, and she ended up following the jug's lead. The jug leads her to me. And so now as I'm teaching her about the whole Wanderer story, she says, I wonder if we can find these descendants. And she started looking all over the country and found a whole bunch of them. And a lot of them didn't even know their ancestor had come off the Wanderer. So that whole research turned into what's called the Wanderer Project. And like I said, you can Google it. You'll see April on there. Yeah. And the face jug, and I'm in there somewhere, and I'm in the documentary and all that kind of thing.
I remember seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how that. Now this is the good thing. Dave is very famous for doing the writing on the jugs and doing the poems. And matter of fact, this exhibition is a major exhibition that opened at the Met in New York. It's called The Black Potters of Edgefield County. Hear Me Now. And they were going to focus on Dave at first, and then we said, hey, let's include the face vessels. But in the process, we talked about, well, there were a lot of other African Americans that were making this pottery, but they couldn't read or write because of the laws. So they weren't able to sign their work, but you know, they were making some great things. So why don't we try to include all the black potters and see who we can find? So they did a major exhibition, it opened at the Met in New York, went to Boston, Museum of Fine Arts, then it went to Michigan. Right now it's in Atlanta at the High Museum. And that's supposed to be the end of the run. They were trying to introduce this thing across the country, really up in the north. And I think what they're going to do, since it's ending, they're going to try to get it down to the International African American Museum in Charleston. But they were trying to get it, but they had already set the schedule, so they have to return all those items to people. But they're going to try to get the New York group and things like that to put together a second exhibit, open it at Charleston, and then try to go east to west this time. And then when we come back and do the third time, we're going to try to take it overseas. Okay. You know, so we're trying to spread a local story nationally and then globally.
Yeah.
But we can, and see the way we're doing it, you can use the model and do a lot of the local stories the same way. Once you develop it out, then you can say, okay, now we're going to make it travel, you know, take it up north. Then we're going to make it travel and go west. And as you're doing that, the different news feeds start picking up on the exhibit. And then I got called by the British Broadcasting Network on some Hamburg stuff I was working on. You know, after they had that thing at the Capitol with Trump.
Yeah, Hamburg Massacre.
Yeah, and so they said, hey, man, looks like this thing is kind of similar to what they did back then. And when they started Googling the Hamburg stuff, my name kept popping up. So these people over in Europe, you know, were calling me. They did a big old piece over there. So, you know, with the technology we have today, if you develop that story and it catches a couple of places, then all of a sudden people are starting to call and say, hey, can we get some information over here? And I think that's going to happen with Orangeburg because, like I said, it was a small place that had a ton of history. It was just still sitting right in the Orangeburg area, you know, and it wasn't getting out. And now it's starting to get out. Cecil Williams is helping that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of that civil rights, you know, the seeds of the civil rights movement a decade before Rosa Parks sat down was in the Low Country. Yeah. You know, it was in Charleston, Orangeburg, you know, Beaufort areas and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow, that man, you hit on so many different things. My mind is all over the place, but I'm glad you said because you know we are always into tracing lineage and everything.
Yeah.
And I know some of the people on the ship were Congolese, Yoruba. I think they had Yoruba names. Dominique there is a descendant, maybe not a descendant of the Wanderer, but his ancestor was from the Dahomean region. Was it?
He was Yoruba. He was Yoruba. He's from what's known.
Yoruba?
Yeah, he's from what's known today in that region of Benin and Nigeria. Abram Phila Ori.
Yeah, that's what I think the largest part of my ancestry comes from that same region, that Benin region. But you know, of course, we got, you know, I tell people all the time, this was something I used to hear growing up. And you know, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And we were just really getting, you know, that African identity, you know, because we going through the Black Power movement and things like that. And I remember when people started saying, y'all don't know where you come from, your nationality. You know how the Moors do, about your nationality. And until you know that, don't call yourself an African American or that kind of thing. Well, I was saying that if you're in America and you came from, you know, one of your ancestors came out of Africa, when they got on those boats coming from different tribes, different nations, when they got to America, they didn't have the freedom to say, well, I'm a Nigerian and I want my wife to be Nigerian. Or I'm you know, a Ghanaian and I want my wife to be, you know, a Ghanaian. I'm a Igbo. I want my wife to be Igbo. They were mixing.
Yeah.
You know. So we ended up having, you know, 8, 9 different African nations in us.
Right.
And so I said, I can't, you know, sometimes it's 20% here, 20% there, 20% over here. And so I said, well, African American really does capture it because we got to claim all of them,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know. But
Exactly.
at the same time, we were born on this land,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and raised on this land. And really, if it wasn't for our history here, there wouldn't be in America, you know,
Exactly.
because we developed everything, you know.
Everything.
So I don't want to act like we didn't do what we did here, you know, or that we don't have, you know, 4 or 5 generations that lived, bled, died, worked here.
Mm-hmm.
So I just say, well, I got to claim all those parts of
Yeah.
it, you know. But see, we are Africans by descent,
Yeah.
Right. Right.
but we African American by being the fact that we were born here.
Mm-hmm.
Our ancestors did what they did here, and I'm not going. You know, when they used to tell you go back to Africa, well, we done built everything up. Now you saying go back? We want to go. See, we don't go voluntarily. You know, if I want to go to Africa, I'll go and
Yeah.
get my dual citizenship. I'll do it. But not y'all telling me, oh, thanks for all. You know what happened if we end up, if all of us packed up and went back to Africa? You know what those white folk would have done? They would have
What?
came over there behind us.
Yeah.
Because if y'all
Yeah.
didn't run, y'all would have came and got us.
Yeah.
Y'all
Yeah.
came and got us to do
Yeah.
all this work. Then all the workers leave.
Yeah.
They would have been looking at each other like, "Why? I'm fixing to do this." You know,
We need to go with them.
next thing you know, all them over there.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I mean that's the reality of it. I don't let anybody try to force me into disclaiming anything that's a part of me or claiming anything. We give them the information, do the research, find out who you are, find out your connections, retrieve all that, and then but you make your decision. You self-identify how you want to identify.
There you go.
There you go. That's it. That's exactly what I did. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I did. Because come to find out, um, and I found it out all through DNA. I'm a mix of everything. Got a little
yeah,
bit of everything in me. I just happen to concentrate on that Sierra Leone connection.
right,
That's because I was able to connect with the family over there.
yeah,
But most of it is from the Congo. From
right,
yeah, that's what the boy I believe is 35% or something
yeah,
Congo. But yeah, I claim all of it because
right.
that's what Gullah Geechee people are. We
Yeah, we're a
multi ethnic.
mixture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Our
Yeah,
nation of all of them.
because
yeah,
you know the language. I think I forgot how many African dialects they say is in that Gullah Geechee language. It just so happened that the majority of the words came out of the Sierra Leone area
Mm-hmm.
because of that rice culture came out of that
right,
grain coast.
Mm-hmm.
And
right,
in Charleston was the wealthiest city in the colonies, and you know Charleston was like the 4th largest city, you know, in the colonies after
Mm-hmm.
Boston, New York, and Philly. But it was the wealthiest, and the secret to their wealth was the rice. Yeah, Carolina gold.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
when they would bring all these enslaved people in, they would not sell them to anybody. They wouldn't sell everybody. They'd say, "Hey, y'all come down here, y'all can buy." But we're not selling none of these guys that have the knowledge of how to grow rice. So they kept them. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Now they had
right.
others there too. They just wouldn't sell nobody that had that knowledge of how to grow that rice because they didn't want any other area to learn the secret of their wealth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so Carolina kept them. That's why it's so much Sierra Leonean words and phrases in the Gullah Geechee language. But they have you know, maybe 10 other African dialects, if not more. And even if you were from Sierra Leone and enslaved and you have the knowledge of growing rice, they're not necessarily going to let you marry somebody from Sierra Leone. You know, it's going to be because they try to breed people and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You still got the knowledge, you're not letting that go, but you might have, you know, like I said, Igbo or Yoruba wife,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know. And then when the children come, you know, they mix those two, but then they might marry somebody that's mixed with 2 others.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by the time you get to us, like I say, we will have 10 or so different African nations in our blood. So
Mm-hmm.
I claim them all. But if you can find an ancestor that came through one, of course you're going to gravitate to that because that's the one that took you back to Africa.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
right.
even though you acknowledge the rest of them are in your bloodline. So I claim the continent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. That's the
Yeah.
best way to do it.
And,
Because,
because a lot of those folks migrated down to West Africa,
yeah,
coming out of Egypt and all, and Kemet, Ethiopia. A lot of those guys getting in different civil wars and all kinds of things was migrating over to West Africa. So a lot of their roots are coming out of North and East Africa and South
Mhm.
Africa. So like I said, I just claim the continent.
Yeah, we was already intermarrying before our ancestors even came to the the New World. So yeah, claim the whole continent because based our ancestry traces all throughout the continent, even to the Pacific or the Indian Ocean island of Madagascar.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
claim it all.
Well, what I always find fascinating is we're right here in Orangeburg, and all through my research, I keep finding connections back to Charleston. It always leads back to Charleston. These the colonizers and slave masters was doing a lot of business down in that Charleston area, even though we were up here in the so-called Midlands. I just find that part fascinating because a lot of us don't even think that we have that Charleston connection, but that's where I'm finding them.
But they're not really thinking it through. You can't bring a boat and dock and be in Orangeburg.
It
ain't coming up the Atlantic Ocean. You can't land in Orangeburg. So you're landing in Charleston. I mean, I'm talking about even the Europeans that was colonizing, but they were getting off the boat on the coast.
Right.
Then they would like the family have like 10 children. They move off, they get their land, and they started moving west, coming more inland. So those families that were colonizing Orangeburg County, they came from families that came out of Charleston.
Yeah.
Right.
So they had a connection. Then the Africans that were coming in, they were going. Let's say your granddaddy got a plantation in Charleston. The grandson gets some land in Orangeburg County. Well, he inherited the people out of the granddaddy plantation, or the granddaddy giving them like a wedding present. You're gonna get so many Africans and things like that. So everybody's coming in from the coast, moving inland. So that's why the connection. Why would you would trade from Orangeburg to Charleston? Because your connection is in Charleston too.
Yeah.
You know, and the supply coming from. Supply coming in Charleston.
That's what I was thinking about the whole time that I was down in the Bahamas recently, because I was right in that area where they had all the pirate ships, and the pirates were bringing.
They were doing the same thing,
They were bringing captives straight up the Edisto River from down that area, from down off the Savannah River and all of that. But I that stayed on my mind while when I was on this. I would wake up in the morning and just look out across the ocean, and that's what I would think about how many.
We got that Pan-Africanism. That's what the focus should be on, because when you go to the islands, my son goes to South America a lot. He goes to Brazil a lot because that's probably where the largest, group of Africans are still ethnic, and they basically created the culture down there. But the thing is, like I said, when those boats, they had a group, especially from the Grain Coast, that would come straight from Bunce Island over there in Sierra Leone, come straight to Charleston.
Yeah.
So that was that one group that was just African that didn't stop nowhere on the way, just came straight to Charleston. But most of those ships, especially a lot of the early ones, they'd go down to South America, hit the Caribbean.
Yeah.
They're offloading people there. Sometimes they'll pick some up that's been there for a couple of decades and put them on the boat and bring. So they had those folk that was having that island experience first and South America experience, and then coming up. But like you could be on that boat, a family of like 5, and 2 people could get let off in Brazil, 1 get let off in Mexico, another one get let off in America. After 1 generation, we speak in English, they speak in Spanish, and the Brazil folks speak in Portuguese. So even though they like first cousins, they don't even know their family. They think that's a whole nother people.
Yeah.
Like Hispanics, but they really just got let off down there. Your brother just happened to get let off down there. His children speak Spanish. My children speak English, and they thinking that, hey, that's them Spanish people. They thinking that's some English people, but I mean them American folk, and they first cousins. So we got that connection of everything back to Africa. Once you start saying, hey, look, all us is traced back there. And since all of us have that same experience of mixture, you know, when they wherever they went it down there, they couldn't tell them people, y'all got to marry somebody out of your own tribe. So they got 7, 8, 9, 10 different African nations in them, just like we got 7, 8, 9, 10 in us.
New World Africans. That's another term the term is too. New
Right.
World Africans.
Yeah. And see, y'all know the whole culture is great. I mean, a few times we were talking about the Maroons and things like that. You know, but all that's part of our history, our bigger history. Now you start where you are, because we gotta get that local stuff first, and then we gotta teach them their connection, you know, to the bigger story. But as we put the local story out, we're trying to connect, you know, on the national level and then the global level.
Well, a lot of us are starting to get more enlightened on these issues that we're talking about. And for me, man, it just excites me to see the younger generation coming up and doing this research and everything, because that's what we need. And even still, when I was at another event a few weeks ago, I was not surprised, but I was just happy to see these young ladies talking about the same issues we're talking about here. That it gives me hope, because I'm the elder now, so I'm happy to see these young folks picking up the mantle, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, because that intergenerational is important. It was always important. It's just that we lost a connection after a while, when we got around the millennial, because we always had, see what happened, civil rights movement had some good stuff and some bad stuff. Back when we were growing up, your mom, grandparents, great-grandparents, all them kind of lived in the same area, sometime in the same house, but after the civil rights movement opened up all this access to, you can go to any college you want to and things like that. You had the kids that were now going, remember the older ones couldn't even go to school. So they wasn't going to move too far away. We farm here, we do everything right here. I'm going to give you a piece of land, you live right there. Grandparents, you eating at the table 3 or 4 generations. And you could have those conversations. But once those kids were going off to college, especially Gullah Geechee, we almost lost that for a while, because those kids were going off, getting teased about their accent and trying to get rid of it. And then go back home and be ashamed to go home or take their friends down to home, because mom might have been, a maid or something like that. And she got the thick Gullah Geechee accent. And that's when I was going to school, like in the 80s, when I went to South Carolina State. I remember when I first said, man, people in Orangeburg used to tease us about that, call us Geechees and stuff. Hey, man, what you talking about? Like, you so far away from us.
Yeah.
But
same thing happened to me when I was growing up. Like you, I'm a child of the 60s also. And when I first went up to New York in the early 70s, late 60s and everything, I was getting teased big time. And I was around people from Charleston, Orangeburg, and all that. But it was like, it was so many cousins there from South Carolina. It felt like home. But the other people from New York, those were the ones who were giving me a hard time and teasing me about my accent. Cause he a Geechee boy from South Carolina. He talked funny, and then it reversed. When I came back down south, when I used to come visit my grandparents and everything, and my cousin and everything, they was telling me, "Oh, he done went up north now. He got a New York accent.
City boy now.
He trying to talk proper now." That's what they used to tell me. They used to always. They had a thing. They used to always ask me to say certain words.
Right.
And they would get a kick out of that.
Hey, but it's funny, man. If you teach, this is why we're teaching this now. Elders need to teach young people. Young people need to grab a hold of it and then go on and take it further. Because my great grandmother, like I said, both of her parents had been born in slavery, and but she went to Allen University, so she was the first college grad out of the family, teaching down there on James Island. But she taught me all my history when I was a kid. So she always told me, whenever people say anything about the way I speak, that it's the African in me. So when I got up to state and they would say, now I don't even know the connection. I didn't know the whole history, you know.
Mhm.
But when people would say, "Hey, there ain't nothing but that Geechee dude over there," I would just say, "No, it's the African in me," because I said, "Man, we're just closer to Africa coming down out of Charleston because they were getting off the ship right there. So we
Right.
got a lot of that stuff still in us." So I
Mhm.
didn't say, but I was taking it as a pride thing that I'm closer to African than if you want to call me that than you are. So you self-fuel yourself. Now
Mhm.
up in the north in New York, y'all remember when the jazz era started
Mhm.
in the 1920s?
Yeah.
And the signature song of the entire jazz era was the Charleston
Yeah.
Right.
song and dance. Josephine Baker, all them folks doing it.
Mhm.
That was the craze all over the world. They were doing it over in France and all that kind of stuff. Well,
Right.
that's named after those dudes out of the Jenkins Orphanage down there in Charleston
Yeah.
who were playing music up in New York. They were some of the developers of jazz. And they would say when they come up there, they used to be playing that music and doing these crazy dances. And they say, "Hey, Geechees, y'all do that Charleston for me." And it turned into a big old parade. But the thing, man, they took pride in being called a Geechee.
Yeah. There was a club up there called the Geechee, I believe, during that
Yeah,
time.
matter of fact, Bumpy Johnson,
Yeah.
the godfather of Harlem, he was
Mhm.
from Charleston. And this group, they used to call them the Geechee Boys. But
Mhm.
they know what they're about to get from them Geechee Boys. you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
so
another interesting thing. I think I might have told you this before, Wayne. My wife's aunt was Francine Williamson. She was in
right.
the she used to make movies, the
Yeah.
well, not the exploitation, but the early Black
Before that,
American
yeah.
movies.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't even know her at the time. I knew her, but I didn't know who she was at the time because she was at my wedding when we got married. And now
Yeah.
I'm just recently finding out that she used to work at Small's Paradise, and
Right.
Malcolm X was the dishwasher there. So
Yeah.
I'm sure she had to speak to him, or or knew him or whatever. But that's
Right.
just another connection there, since this is what we've been talking about today. But yeah,
Yeah.
man, yeah.
Matter
I
of
did.
fact, Dominique, I'm gonna have to come down there and spend some time with you, man. We gotta hang out, man. Because I say
Yeah.
that next generation, man, they able to get it early, and
Mhm.
they got technology. I had the great grandmama, growing up in Charleston, she would just take me all around the city and say, "Hey, here's where the boats came in. That's where they used to hang people." She would just show me everything and teach me, and stay with me, and it kind of fueled it until the technology could catch up.
Yeah.
And but we had a period in there right around it's after that civil rights movement, 80s and stuff like that. It was called the Me Generation. You remember that? They
Yeah.
called it the Me
Yeah.
Generation. Everybody going for
Yeah.
their self.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so those folk that went off to school, they were trying to get rid of their Gullah accent. And then the story came back around with the guy in Sierra Leone that was doing the research on Bunce Island. What's
Joseph
his name?
Porter.
Yeah, Joseph Apollo.
Mhm.
While he was doing that work down there,
Opala,
they
Joseph Opala.
rediscovered,
Yeah.
they rediscovered Lorenzo Dial Turner.
Mhm.
See, he started his work in the late 20s and early 30s, wrote the book in the 40s, but it didn't catch on because it was like a scholarly book.
Mhm.
Nobody wasn't going to read that book. And that book was on our shelf, because my great grandma was on James Island when he came down there. So I always
Okay.
saw the book at the house, the Gullerism, Africanisms in the Gullah language.
Yeah.
Oh,
But you can't pick that book up and read that book, So the average person wasn't catching on to what he had put down. Now, when Opala started doing this was the late 70s, and making that straight connection.
Yeah.
Now people started hearing, and he started doing lectures and presentations. He came down to Avery and stuff like that. And now the average Gullah Geechee person, descendant, they hear him for the first time that, hey man, y'all don't realize y'all the most African of all African Americans.
Mhm.
Now there's a pride in it. Now the kids that went off to school, they coming back home saying, "Hey, grandma, could you teach me my my own language again? Can you
Mhm.
tell me some of those stories again?" And now it's taking off. We got the Gullah Geechee Heritage Quarter, got Gullah Geechee festivals. Now it's becoming a massive thing. But in maybe about 2 decades, before Apollo started bringing that stuff back to the forefront, because that's how we rediscovered Lorenzo Dial Turner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I went back, got my mom. I said, get that book for me. You know, because the book was on the shelf all my life. You know, and she got the thing signed by his wife when she came down here. But like I said, man, that it just shows how sometimes it's time, sometimes it's patience. God didn't allow it to die out before this came out. You know, and now it's celebrated. Same way that pottery and those space trucks are starting to be celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
Gullah, the culture, the language is celebrated. There's a pride in it now.
I'm happy to see it, man. I heard the song on the radio the other day about Geechee in the Blood. Yeah. I love to hear that song on the radio now, man. It got me singing in the car.
Yeah, and it got a lot more of us going back to the mother continent.
Yeah,
you know, because they did the whole when Opala came down, they organized those trips to connect folk back to their family in Sierra Leone.
Yes, sir.
That was the start of a whole new thing, man. And it hadn't let up, and matter of fact, it's gaining steam.
Yeah.
We just did a Gullah Geechee festival up here, and we all the way up in Aiken County. You know, we did that one maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah, I think Chief he's been trying to.
He's been coming in and out. Yeah, he's been going in and out.
I know he's dying to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when he gets in, you jump right in there.
Yeah. You know what?
Yeah,
another interesting.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. We can hear you.
Yeah, I was saying, you're right on point about how the research passed from Lorenzo Doe Turner to Opala, and then back to the community as well. You know, this knowledge and this history hasn't always been accessible to the community. Right. Before, you had to be a scholar, you had to have some kind of government grant to do the research, you had to have some special connection. I feel blessed because I first heard Geechee from my mama mouth. Yeah. But a lot of people have to rely on the research. And so, you know, we're thankful for that as well. But in terms of Sierra Leone and Opala had came out here originally, I believe in like 1974, 1976. Don't quote me on that. It's one of those 2 years. And he came here originally as Peace Corps. And the connection is that Lorenzo Doe Turner wrote the original Creole Peace Corps manual. So the people who was learning how to be Peace Corps was learning on St. Helena Island and coming directly to Sierra Leone. He was one of them. And so it's a lot of interconnections there with people who had access to the research and the knowledge that we, the actual descendants, don't have access to. And that's one of the main reasons why I believe I've been so active myself on the continent with the research. They need to connect with us, man. They need to reach out to us, man. Especially when doing the tours. In 2019, the tours was being organized in partnership with Opala's Sierra Leonean friends. His Sierra Leonean friends are hostile. They are very, very, very hungry for the money when it comes to tourism and anything to do with Gullah Geechee. So even myself as a Gullah Geechee in Sierra Leone, I have to contend with the Sierra Leoneans who are involved in the Gullah Geechee struggle as well. So now they contend against me, even though I'm here. Yeah. And it's something that is nasty. Opala should be more open about some of the things that happened during his time here in Sierra Leone. There's some things we don't know about as Gullah Geechee people. Yeah. That's a shame. It happened over here. There's a lot of things we don't know about, but there's another time to talk about it. But I'm telling you that the United States government, the United States government is they're 100% aware of what they did. Even there would not be a Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor if Opala hadn't been chased out of Sierra Leone during the war. When he returned to America, he went right to St. Helena and they started that corridor process. So there's a big relationship between there. And we really need to understand who Opala is, who his father is, Peter Opala, who was the Supreme Court judge in Oklahoma. We really should research these people. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Matter of fact, I was just reaching for this. Look at this thing here.
Gullah.
This is there's a white guy, Dick Reeves. This guy did this thing, man. I think this was how Gullah was kind of perceived back before. Lorenzo Dow Turner already did his work, but it didn't get into the public yet. And so this guy here was acting like he was a expert on the Gullah language.
Mm-hmm.
He's a white Charlestonian. And this is when they thought it was just broken English. So he's going all over the country explaining Gullah to people and acting like it's almost like an infantile attempt for Africans to speak English.
Mm.
And that was what was going around. That was almost the prevailing thought on it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, what happened when Opala started making that, that direct connection, that brought Lorenzo Dow Turner's work back, which was putting Gullah where it actually belongs as a mixture of African dialect
Yes, sir.
with English. But I said, this is weird. I was listening to this thing the other day. It's crazy.
Wow.
But I've got
I believe you, man.
Yeah. Like I said, that was happening. They were considering themselves the experts, white academia.
Mm-hmm.
Even when they did Porgy and Bess down there in Charleston.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So they did I think the guy wrote the book first, Porgy,
Mm-hmm.
and he's all around the same time, just before Lorenzo Dow Turner started doing his work, because Porgy's been like in 1930,
Mm-hmm.
Late 1920s, and then they did turn into a play, so it became the first opera in America. That's the first original opera in America, and it's based on Gullah Geechee people.
Mm-hmm.
But they was acting like the whole thing was really about just the language, about how they speak.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, they weren't thinking about it as a whole culture.
Yeah.
But even as they're doing it, you see the people out there fishing and making their nets in the play. So you can see the culture going on, but they were acting like Gullah was only them speaking a particular language,
Mm-hmm.
So, but like I said, now that it's back in the forefront, it's being embraced wholeheartedly. And we're looking into y'all know how hip hop is. Hip hop really is kind of an extension of Gullah. But when they created hip hop, it was those 4 elements. It was the music, which is usually that was sampling on the boombox, turntables, the DJs.
Mm-hmm.
So the DJs, then you had the MCs.
Mm-hmm.
The MCs used to introduce the DJ. DJ was the star of the show because he didn't want to keep the party going.
Right.
Then the MCs started saying, well, I need a little shine myself now. So they started coming up with creative ways to introduce. So they rhyming, and the way they're going to introduce the DJ. Then it took on its own life. Then they had the art, which was like graffiti. Remember the tagging trains and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And then the 4th aspect was the dance, the break dancing. That's based on the same way the Harlem Renaissance came about, because they had the artists in the Harlem Renaissance, they had the poets, the writers,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the musicians, the jazz guys.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that same pattern. And the culture that came out of, the Gullah Geechee culture that came out of the African culture had all those different aspects to it to be a culture. All that's, you had the African culture that got transplanted over here.
Yeah, man, it's all
the Gullah Geechee culture that went up to Harlem because they came from the South and went up north.
Mm-hmm.
Turned into the Harlem Renaissance, and then the children or grandchildren of that developed hip hop, but all those same elements are there to be a culture. Yeah.
You got to think about the most sampled artist in hip hop and probably music in general is James Brown. And if James Brown is from Hardwood, if you listen, I didn't mean you discussed this in the comment section a few months back. If you listen to the way he speak,
he's a Gullah.
Yeah.
Because he said, "Look at y'all, look at y'all."
Yeah. Yeah.
And James didn't try to change for nobody.
No, he didn't.
They went all over the world. I remember Dizzy Gillespie, who came out of Chirac. Dizzy Gillespie would go all over the world. Matter of fact, he became a dual citizen. He was a citizen of Ghana. Everywhere Dizzy went in the world, Dizzy would say, "I'm Dizzy Gillespie from Chirac, South Carolina."
Yeah.
And he had been living in New York, for decades. But I'm trying to tell y'all where I come from. And I'm not ashamed of the fact that I come from this little town,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I knew some people from Chirac. They couldn't wait to go up north, man. They was straight out the old cotton fields and everything. Yeah.
Well, hey, man, that was the thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
The way jazz developed, they developed in the South. But if you were in Charleston or South Carolina, when you went north, you went straight up. Hit New York,
Yeah.
Philly, Boston area. If you were
Yeah.
in Georgia, you went straight up. Just hit that Cleveland area or something like that. You were in Mississippi, you went straight up. Hit that Chicago area, and not Chicago, Detroit. And then if you
Yeah.
were in Louisiana, you went straight up, and you hit Chicago. So the jazz nurseries were in Chicago and Charleston. The Charleston folk went up to Harlem. Harlem Renaissance blew up. The Louisiana folk, like Armstrong and those guys, they went straight up there, Chicago.
Yeah.
They had a Chicago Renaissance. It's just not as famous as the Harlem Renaissance. So you had these two Renaissances from Southern culture coming north, and then when they got north, they said, "Hey man, we big in Chicago, but we need to go over to New York and play." So they went across the top, hit New York. The New York guys said, "Hey, we made it big in New York. Let's hit Chicago." They went across the top, and it started going like that. And then jazz, blew up, became the world famous music. But it was all, and then of course they wanted to go back and play for their people, so they developed the Chitlin Circuit. So I can go back south and play for my own people. And but there's always this culture that really was rooted out of African in the Gullah into the South, headed north. Everybody, man, when you go over to the West Coast, all that slang language and our regular way of speaking is Gullah rooted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they say bruh, we are shorten everything. Bruh.
Yeah.
Yeah, they dropping those THERs off of there because the Africans
Yeah.
pronounce the THERs, man, and dough and flow. Stuff. Yeah, all that stuff is rooted in that.
Yeah.
They call me a Geechee. I say, hey, you just a watered down one.
Yeah.
I mean, you my brother too now, but I'm listening to you too now. That's some watered down Gullah Geechee stuff. Because if you go back 2 or 3 generations, your grandmama, great grandmama came from out of the South.
I'm a product of that generation, man. My mama couldn't wait to go up north to New York because she couldn't find any work here. So the first thing she did, she caught the first thing smoking on well, it was me, her, and some other of her good friends from all around this area. We went to Brooklyn.
Yeah,
that's where we ended up at in Brooklyn, and we just spread it out to Harlem and the Bronx.
Man, it's funny. We went to Brooklyn too. My dad was from the Edgefield County area. He ended up in Florence, and then my mom was from Charleston. When they got married, coming out of South Carolina State, my dad had all these cousins up there in New York, so they all moved to Brooklyn. And so I lived in Brooklyn, for a couple of years when I was little. But mom and dad, my dad used to move around a lot. So one day, mom just said, "Look, it was all right when it was just the two of us. Now I got these kids. They need to put down some roots somewhere. We ain't gonna be uprooting these kids every time you turn around." So she said, "I tell you what, I'm going back to Charleston, where them folks got their grandparents, great grandparents, and family. If you want to come, that's fine. But if you don't come, we ain't leaving no more." So we went down to Charleston, and that was it. And Pops came down, but he was still in and out half the time. And that's where they ended up splitting because he was one of those guys just had to always move.
Yeah.
And but she said, "Look, I'm not moving no more with these kids."
Yeah.
But that turned out to be a big blessing because I got to grow up with the great grandma. They live right across the street. And then she started teaching me that she retired as a principal in '62. I was a year and a half old. So she retired after teaching for 48 years. She didn't have nobody to teach no more. And here was a baby across the street. So she just grabbed me and kept me and started teaching. She said, "Man, I got to teach you your history because you ain't going to get it when you go to school." Because I just left the school system. I know it ain't in there, So she said, "I got to teach you." So I ended up having this, master teacher walking me around a living museum, which is Charleston, and teaching me about Black history, where all the people came in from, And if my dad had dragged me off, I wouldn't have got that.
Yeah.
Right.
Got that sense of community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. A huge community of people from all over South Carolina. That's how I grew up. And
Because even when you went north, the people were still south. So they still was always coming back.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We kept 95 hot.
Yeah, that's what
95
I'm saying.
was, 95
And
was
hey,
hot.
the northern folk will be coming down with that car loaded with stuff.
Oh,
we
yeah.
used to love to see you coming
Oh,
because you
yeah,
was
yeah,
always
yeah,
bringing
yeah.
something.
Hey,
And then when
oh,
y'all left, y'all took a whole bunch of food back. You know,
we sure did. We took
yeah,
it straight to Harlem. I
that's
know
right.
people that will come down here on a regular basis and
Yeah,
get farm products, agricultural products,
right.
whatever you want to call it, sausage, bootleg
Yeah,
liquor, whatever. They go straight to Harlem and sell it.
that's right.
And the different bars in the area.
Yeah,
Well, when I first got to New York, the bars were very popular.
yeah,
Certain areas were known for certain bars, and people would come in and sell whatever they was bringing back from down south.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how it
yeah.
was every summer. A whole bunch of folk coming down from New York.
That's how my summers were. As soon as school got out, I was on the
Yeah,
trailways bus coming down to Orangeburg. My
right.
whole summer was like that. My
And
mama
then
didn't cook.
if you get in enough trouble, they gonna save yourself.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Hey, the
yeah.
same way in the South though, if you got in a lot of trouble local, they gonna send you up north. Yeah,
The young girls would get pregnant down here
yeah, send
and
them up
come up
north.
north to have their
Yeah,
babies.
right.
A lot, that's how a lot of my cousins ended up in New York.
Yep.
You know, that's exactly what happened. Great grandmama tried to raise them, but when they went out on their
Yeah,
own and did things with them boys, they got shipped up north.
that's right.
Hmm.
You see, all
Well,
those stories gotta be told. That's part of our story too. You know.
oh yeah, oh
That's right.
yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I think Chief was trying. He's been trying to come back in, and I know we're over our time. I don't know what he wants to do, but
Yeah.
yeah, I want him to get a chance to say a couple of things before we log off.
Let's see if he can make it back in there.
Yeah. But what else you got? What other projects you got going on?
Like I said, that Hamburg Memorial Weekend is what's coming up next. Well, we got the Juneteenth is coming up round our heels, and then we got that Hamburg Memorial Project coming up in July. So that's the next two focuses. But I was actually working on that Hamburg book for some years. I need to go ahead and tie it up and finish it. I got another book on jazz in the family and some other things I'm working on. I can't look past July for the local stuff yet. Almost every month we do something. You know what's coming up? Memorial Day. We're
Mm-hmm.
gonna do the first Memorial Day down there in Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So we always do something on that. We'll do a little presentation on that.
Well, it look like Chief is back. Chief,
Yep.
you got something to say, Chief?
Yeah, I just wanted to close out and say, man, thank you. It's been a great show. It's been a great show. As much as I can keep up with it, man, we got to do a conference. We got to put all of these brands together, us, Walter, and start doing this, man, like every quarterly for the people, man. Just give them some good information. We're great researchers. We're the generation born to do this.
Right.
We're the ones born for this moment. Let's do this. Let's do this. This is more than just a discussion, man. This is Pan-African unity locally, right there in South Carolina.
There you
we
go.
need it.
Yeah.
This is a movement, man.
Thank you, Brother Wayne.
Hey, anytime, brothers. Dominique, I'm coming to see you soon, man. Hey, Baba, give him my information.
All right, make sure to do that.
I got you. I'll be glad. When Dominique comes to see you, I see Dominique all over town. I see his mama. I see his younger brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I didn't eat with them, but they were in the same restaurant I was in about a month or so ago. So
up at the crossroads.
Yeah, his mama know me when she see me.
Yeah. Because I'm always riding through on my way to Charleston.
Yeah.
On my way back.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, they got that Igala Kingdom. I don't know if y'all know, brother.
Yeah, I know all into that. Yeah.
Yeah. They got something going on down in Hollywood, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Might be next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna run down to that, and on my way back through, I'll probably swing through Orangeburg.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Brother Wayne.
Yeah.
Hey, Brother Wayne. Look, man, we trying to do the first Orangeburg Gullah Geechee Heritage Festival. We want to do it this October if possible. We're gonna need you on board. Even
Okay,
if it's
man.
small, we want to get it started over at the Gardens.
Okay,
Even
that's
if
good.
it's small, we want
Yeah.
to go ahead and make it official.
Okay, yeah, just get that information out early. Cause
Yeah,
Orangeburg will probably turn
For
out.
sure.
Cause that gonna be their first
but
one, you know.
Then you have it in the right spot too, over there around the Gardens, man. That's a good
Yeah.
spot to have it too.
that's for
Uh-huh.
sure. I've been having conversations about that, and we're looking to do something either in the Garden or Harmon Park. Somewhere we're
Yeah.
trying to find. I was looking at the fairgrounds, but the fairgrounds is pretty expensive to to get that for the day. But we are looking into some things, and I hope yeah, we should be able to do something by October. We're in the planning stages now.
Yeah.
And you know,
yeah.
y'all know
Maybe.
Dr. Curry's family got a little spot. Y'all know about
Oh
that? In
yeah,
Orangeburg. You
yeah.
can
You're
check
right.
into that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's up on the Shilling Bridge Road right there. I know
Yeah.
exactly where his. That's on his. I believe that's on his grandmama land. But they really built it up, and it's very nice.
Yeah,
It's
they got.
very nice.
Yeah, so that might be
Keep it
an
in
option
house.
too.
Yeah, keep it in house, man. Keep it with the
Yeah, I
people.
forgot.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I forgot about his.
Yeah.
I think it's called the Landing or something.
Yes, and
Something like that.
that's what it is. The Landing. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm gonna talk to him about that.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. But
Mhm.
yeah, guys, it's been a great show, man.
Yeah.
And well, we always gonna do this, and we always gonna invite you back, Brother Wayne. It's always a pleasure when you come on. And
Yeah.
man, I
Hey,
enjoy this.
pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. Last
Man,
words,
I learned
Chief.
a lot.
You got last words, Chief? I
Yeah,
don't know if
man.
he
Hold
did.
up for a minute. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think he froze. I don't think he can hear me.
No, he can't hear us. He ain't frozen.
Yeah, man.
Well,
Yeah,
he-
man.
There you
Just hopefully we can keep this ball rolling, man. Keep this ball rolling, bro.
Yep.
Yeah, he went out. He went out again. But yeah, thanks guys for coming on.
All right,
Okay,
no
man.
problem, man. Enjoy this.
Yeah, got some new projects now.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, y'all be easy. I'm looking
All right,
forward to
now.
your books coming out too, Mr. O'Brien.
I got you, man.
All right.
I'll get you the ones they got out already.
Okay, just let me know.
All right, then.
Y'all be easy.
All right.
All right.
Y'all got somebody that signed us out here. I got to be chief.
Okay, I think he just signed us out. He just went out.
Yeah, he went out.
All right, Dominique, man. Thanks for coming on, man.
All right, y'all be easy. Anytime.
Yo, y'all got me? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. So we're gonna sign out, man. Hopefully y'all can hear me, man. That was a great show. Sorry
Man,
about
all
the
right.
technical difficulty.
All right.
All right, y'all be easy.
All right.